our final cup of coffee in the Climate Generation space. Cheers, everyone.
It's the last coffee I'll ever have.
Okay. I'm definitely going to have more coffee. Even today, probably more coffee.
Plant-based plastic.
Love it. So, considering that it's the end of the 2 weeks, although the COP has been extended through tomorrow, I thought it'd be good just to chat about our experiences. But maybe we can start, Sarah Beth, because you were there all night last night in the negotiations. So just tell us, where are we in the negotiations briefly, and what happened last night?
Right. So, hi, Sarah Beth here. Nice to see you all again. I was, and still am awake from last night, but the Paris des Comités was pushed back significantly throughout the day, and then had a convening session at 11:30, in which
11:30
p.m. which the delegations then at that point were able to start negotiating the draft text. They had 2 hours to review a completely overdrafted text with changes to many of the articles that we've been talking about: finance, adaptation, mitigation, loss and damage. The list goes on. But that text had originally been cut from 43 pages to 29. Things were reintroduced back into it because there was a significant amount of human rights language left off the table, and a huge chunk of loss and damage mechanisms taken out. And then the draft text that was delivered to delegates last night was at 27 pages, again with significant brackets taken out, so a lot of sections that had been finalized, but still not a cohesive draft that everyone agreed with the main target still being finance, and this question of the degree target, is it 1.5 or 2 degrees?
Right.
So those are the negotiation platforms throughout the night that we heard from all the delegations from the United States, from Saudi Arabia, main players, India, China, Tuvalu, the small Indonesian states, and the idea as it's moving forward, they convened at 5:41 this morning because COP President Laurence decided to allow people to go home and get sleep because he realized the futility of continuing on with the discussion when everyone is so tired. But it's moving forward, and he has a deadline, and he wants that deadline to be set for Saturday.
Okay.
So we're looking at a draft to come out on about maybe 11 o'clock or midday on Saturday. Negotiators will look over the draft again, and then we should have a final copy Saturday night. So...
All right, crunch time.
Such, best laid plans.
Okay,
we'll see how that goes.
So that's the official negotiations, and then all of us have been kind of wandering around. So does anyone want to start? Like, interesting memories that stand out, or ideas you're left with, experiences that influence the way you're thinking about climate action?
Sure. I'll start.
Okay.
Well, Citizen Voice, which I think is the brainchild of Claire, we didn't know what we wanted to do with Pathway to Paris, just that we wanted to go. And so it was so great to find a project that we could really just get in and engage with the people here. Find out why they're here, what they're doing, and what they're going to do with it. Is it making a difference? So I think that, as a former Peace Corps volunteer, I love coming to the COPs because not everyone's in national dress, but you see people from Africa and Asia. And the island nations are particularly interesting to me because they're the ones who are most at risk. So in the middle of telling people stories and hearing and learning, I'm also understanding how intricate the UN process is and how difficult it is, and why that's one of the blockades to citizen engagement. So I think the work we're doing, along with the people in the Blue Zone, where Sarah Beth and Joe and all the delegates are working, really builds that bridge of bringing the people's voice into the negotiations. And I see that really is the big bang out of this conference, that we made a difference in opening up that conversation ongoingly.
So bringing citizens' voices back into the conversation.
Yes.
Great. Min, did you want to?
Yeah, and I mean, the number of interesting people we've met. There's this whole green zone, and for the first week we really didn't walk around it at all because we'd get in the door and we'd meet someone interesting, and soon we were doing an interview, and it felt like just any person I talked to had another perspective and another story to tell that we wanted to capture. And then others on the team have mentioned, and we have a way to give back for all these stories that we're capturing by being able to publicize them and put them out there on YouTube. for other people to see. And I look forward to continuing to take snippets of these interviews. I think we've done, just Paul and I have done over 50 interviews with people in these 2 weeks, and taking pieces of those and using that ongoing to share the story of what we learned in Paris and all the things that are already happening, that people are doing, how there is this big movement for people to just join in and be a part of, and that we are moving forward. And that although the formal negotiations are important, they're not the most important, or exactly what happens in the final document is not nearly as important as what we do to spread the word of here are the commitments we've made and now we need to hold our leaders accountable to them. Whether they're exactly as aggressive a commitment as we'd like them to be or not doesn't matter as much as really engaging citizens afterwards and taking action on what we agree to here.
Yeah, that's certainly something I've been left with, is like the action and on the periphery of the official negotiations is so important, and I think the French presidency has really recognized that this time.
Yeah, the hardest week will be the week post-draft agreement, because it is required based off of civil society groups, NGOs, all delegations to get the word out about what this draft contextually means for national governments and their mandated plans moving forward, whatever targets they are, whatever it is. It's the assimilation of what that is, like internalizing that document. And then Marrakesh for COP 22. I need to sleep. That's the implementation phase. So if whatever the draft text is now, whether it has teeth, I mean, I don't want to say whether it has teeth, my gosh, it needs to have teeth. It is so morally imperative that it has codified teeth and legislation that countries can work with. But the implementation phase is next year, and throughout that, I hope we're all watching.
Yeah, certainly we will be, I think. You guys have anything that sticks out for you?
Yeah, I just wanted to give credit where credit is due about the foundation of Citizens' Voice, just following up kind of what Paul was saying, is that Citizens' Voice came out of Pathways to Paris, an idea that Joe Robertson had of doing a 24/7 news stream, and as to engage citizens at the COP and bring more voices into the mainstream as part of the Citizens Engagement, Citizens Climate Engagement Network, which was just founded last week. And Citizens' Voice grew out of that. So I just want to give a little bit more background to that.
Yeah.
Well, we were having a conversation before we started the videotaping about participation and what meaningful participation is. So I'm really thinking deeply about how we can have more meaningful participation and how the Citizens Climate Engagement Network can be super powerful, and what that means. And how, I guess it's really exciting to think about how different countries can engage with the the NDCs, the commitments that each of these countries has made. So I think that there could be some very interesting participation in looking at what nations have committed to and then kind of holding them accountable. So that's an exciting opportunity for our future work.
Yeah, just following up on that, I think something that could be really interesting with the Citizens Engagement Network is continuing to build that momentum after COP and to hold those governments accountable, because there's engagement over these 2 weeks and it's really exciting, but everyone knows from previous COPs that it's working on those goals and making sure those things actually happen. So having like a framework like the Citizens Engagement Network could be really cool to potentially use in the future to make sure that governments are held accountable for that.
At least from a policies perspective, that's one of the items that was on the table in the draft text, is the article on INDCs, so nationally determined, individually nationally determined country contributions. It's this idea that there needs to be a 5-year procedural process that revisits them and then ratchets up ambitions as the draft text continues to gain legal teeth over time. And if there isn't this reporting back mechanism, if there isn't a form of participatory democracy, what do these nationally determined plans actually stand for in a country context? And that is one of the most contentious issues as we're moving forward with a draft text, is that can countries internalize these individual country contributions? In the same token, I think you see this idea of what the INDC was supposed to stand for, but there was a huge discrepancy across 100 and there's 196 member states, but not everyone has contributed one yet. Nicaragua stands out, for example, and they have not yet contributed one to the INDC makeup, which still puts us on a 3.7 trajectory. The pledges are not enough yet to go below that 1.5 line that many nation states are calling for. And I think that when we talk about engaging citizens and engaging the public in the process, across the board, I sat with Norwegian delegates yesterday. They're doing a disclosure and inclusivity paper on whether or not the INDC process was inclusive of its population. And what they're gathering is that there was a round of experts that were able to figure out what was the best policy practice. It was very much top-down approach, and that was what was pushed forward. But again, if you can't internalize it among the population, what good is it going to be?
I think that's a big thing that I'm left with as well, is that needing the top down and the bottom up, and that there's a lot of top down within the UN, which makes sense, and that it is so important for citizens to own whatever comes out of Paris, and it does have to be implemented at a local level. That is just the way it works. So I'm still not sure if I understand what the agreement says, and I know I'll
You want it? I have it in my backpack.
partly because I haven't had any time to read it yet. But in terms of really understanding what the outcome of Paris is and how does that relate to us as citizens, and how do we bring that back to our friends and our families, and I think it's really, like you said, it's really important to keep the energy up and the focus on and eyes on Paris even after Paris.
Part of what I've noticed also is the presence of business. Big business, small business. I mean, people are talking carbon pricing at all of the workshops I went to. We follow James Hansen and the top scientists saying fourth generation nuclear has to be part of the mix. Just new things that are going to make 3.7 turn into 1.5 if we're lucky. But we're not going to be able to do this given the way we've been doing things in the past. So setting that ambition so high, it's like a moonshot. When Kennedy said, a man on the moon in 10 years, nobody knew how to do it. Everybody was saying impossible. That's exactly what we need now to drive the entrepreneurial spirit and kind of the can-do attitude, not just American, but everyone is figuring out how do we do something that seems impossible.
You were going to chime in?
Yeah, the other thing that has really stood out for me was our team that has come together for Pathway to Paris. We've had 51 different people that have come from I don't even know how many different countries. And like you said, not understanding the text of the agreement. Well, I don't either, but now I know Sarah Beth, and I know that I can ask her questions and use her as a resource as I go forward and try and explain this to people, and I get to a point where I might be stuck. I have a whole new group of team members that I can call on to help me understand. And that has been an important part of this experience as well. Not just all the other people we've met, but even the way we've coalesced as a team from across the country and across the world.
Yeah, it's important to find that network. I think we're probably near time, but...
Okay. Yeah, just one last thing, I guess. I just came from a talk and they were talking a lot about innovation and how innovation happens. And so one thing I've heard my uncle, who's a big entrepreneur, talk about is if you throw money at a problem, you don't necessarily solve it with innovation. Because I remember I asked him once, why don't we just treat climate change like the Manhattan Project? We'd get all a bunch of best scientists together in a room and throw money at it. I was like, well, that's not how innovation works. There's a lot that has to do with chance and things like that. And the workshop I just came from, they were talking about how innovation really occurs when people start to see solutions. When people start to see solutions, it's kind of a landslide effect, and all of a sudden all these different things start coming. And one thing that I think has really been great about this COP is that people are seeing those solutions. And so I think it's really encouraging that after seeing all those solutions, that innovation will come, that innovation will be spurred. So I think that's one of the things that I think is most inspiring about this COP.
Nice. Now, do we want to end with the Star Wars?
Yeah, I have a call for action for the 5 of us. How many people are here? I can't count
6.
anymore. How many hours have I been awake now? So there were 2, in terms of social movements and these small little projects that just really piss off people at higher levels. What you can do is take out a full-page ad in the International New York Times to talk about social justice and the drivers of that. So this one, in honor of Star Wars as it's coming out, is talking based on behalf of Avas, which is an international organization focused on climate justice.
Wow.
And as you can see here is the movie backdrop for the new Star Wars film that will be coming out, with all the political leaders that will shape the future of our climate agreement. Whether they agree, cooperate, defect, there is no try. Yoda was right, but
Who's this?
he's the chief negotiator for China.
Okay.
And
So-
who's this on?
Brazil.
Okay.
Brazil.
Yep.
Here, Obama's in the background.
And this is from India.
India and Merkel.
Merkel.
So
Interesting.
it's increasingly important to do civil actions like this in some way that it has meaning, because it needs to reach people. So I think a collective consciousness and how we do engage in social solidarity networks is what is important. So citizens' voice.
Tomorrow, 2
Yeah.
o'clock at the Eiffel Tower.
Number of
tens of
places.
thousands of people, and all over the world, this will be happening.
And it's an illegal gathering.
Yeah.
That's the thing. So when we talk about social justice movements, you have to have something to lose. People finally have something to lose, whether they'll be arrested or they'll lose something else with this. And this is where real change does start to happen. So
All right, well,
not allowed.
here's the real change.
happy birthday,
Happy
Kaya!
birthday to
Thank you.
Hopefully there's a
Happy
draft agreement.
birthday.
Yeah, I know,
to
but
you.
that's the birthday present I
Happy
want.
birthday, dear Kaya. Happy birthday to you.
Nice, Paul.
Paris draft agreement.
Here we go. Thanks, guys.
Success in a cup of coffee.
Citizens Voice.
Citizens' voice.
Citizens Voice.
Citizens' voice.